Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And want to start off the episode by thanking everyone for all of the support for the first several episodes of this series. Definitely appreciate all the feedback, all the views, all the thumbs ups, all the comments, and we'll continue to try to improve this series as we move forward, hopefully over period of decades with the Rockies here in Out of the Park Baseball 26. Going to be a relatively quick episode today. As I mentioned, really appreciate the support for the series. So given that we're in the early stages, wanted to make sure that I continue trying to put out at least one episode every day. Unfortunately, if you're looking closely, you'll note that we've moved from the start of the offseason to the start of free agency here. And that's because the episode that I did last night got corrupted when I finished up the episode. There was no video to go with the audio, so I'm going to redo that episode relatively quickly this morning before I head to work. And so it'll be a somewhat shorter episode, and it won't be as detail-oriented because a lot of the decisions I kind of talked through are already made. So instead I'll just summarize where we have been with these Colorado Rockies over the last 3 weeks as we've gotten this off-season underway. First and foremost, when we were thinking about arbitration eligible players, we only made offers when all was said and done to 4 arbitration eligible players on the team. I think that meant that there were 7 that we moved on from. Definitely shopped all of them to try to see if we could get anything of value, but not surprisingly for a 58-win team last year, the players that we did not really want to bring back had little or no trade value, so we ended up just making no offers to those 7 players, and they are all free agents at this point. The 4 arbitration eligible players we brought back were Ryan Feltner, the starting pitcher, who was an inexplicable 11-6 with a 3.70 ERA for us last year, although his ratings don't suggest that's really his likely result. He pitched so well for us, and our pitching is so bad that we just had to bring him back. Elvis Peguero, a guy who was basically replacement level between Milwaukee and our Rockies in the majors last year. But the 28-year-old, soon to be 29-year-old, does have those extreme ground ball tendencies, as well as the ground baller pitcher type that we want to work with a bit here moving forward in Colorado. And we also brought back a couple of position players who were arbitration eligible. Those 2 players were our center fielder, Brenton Doyle, who had a nice year for us last year, hitting .261, 19 homers, and 71 runs batted in, was a league average offensive player with a WAR of close to 4. And then last but not least, Vinny Pasquantino, who we picked up in that trade with Kansas City, and he was very productive for us, hitting .272 with 17 homers and 48 driven in 290 at-bats. So those were the 4 arbitration-eligible players we brought back. The result of moving on from so many players is that as we begin the free agent period, only 27 guys on our 40-man roster, and only 15 in AAA and 13 in AA. So definitely going to be looking to add some major league talent as we move forward, and also going to be looking to hopefully supplement the upper levels of our farm system over the coming few months. Also think that in addition to free agency, and we'll be going through the highlights of the free agency class shortly, the Rule 5 draft is going to be real important for us. You could make an argument that we need to turn over every pitcher on the pitching staff, although clearly we're not going to do that with the fact we're bringing back at least the 2 pitchers that we gave arbitration offers to. And my hope is that we'll be able to find multiple guys in the Rule 5 draft that can be better than this pretty dismal pitching staff that we had here in 2025. And we also got our activities in the development lab underway at the start of the off-season. I mentioned when we started this series that I was going to play with 10 development lab slots this off-season and every off-season, and only use 8 of them for the team myself. I get that the AI is not always perfect, and I get that there's definitely areas where as a human you can do better and even sometimes take advantage of the AI. So I figured that giving the AI teams a couple more slots in the player development lab would hopefully help them on the margins compared to me running with only 8 slots. So that's what we've decided to do. A mix of some of the top prospects in our organization and then some good younger players at the major league level in the development lab for us this year. Our top 4 prospects are all in the lab. First baseman Charlie Condon working on quality of contact as we try to hopefully develop the corner infielder / corner outfielder into a big-time offensive player. And then the 3 top young pitchers in our organization, draftees Jamie Arnold and Jack 24 Bauer, as well as Braden Nett, who we picked up in a trade last year, all going to be working on improving their control. Position player-wise, catcher Drew Romo, outstanding defensive catcher whose bat is a question, is going to work on plate discipline. Similarly, Ezekiel Tovar, the outstanding defensive shortstop whose bat is a question, is going to work on his plate discipline as well. Amador going to work on plate discipline, and then the pitcher Jaden Hill is going to work on secondary pitch improvement. So 8 guys going through the development lab. You can see some early progress. Tovar and Amador excelling. Bauer, Nett, and Arnold on track. And then Hill, Condon, and Romo frustrated. We ultimately finished up with a couple of excelling programs and 3 on-track programs out of the 8 that we've got going. I think it would be a pretty solid result for these Rockies. You'll also note that for the most part, with the exception of Condon's contract, we went with medium difficulty programs that hopefully have a somewhat higher level of success. Figure there'll be plenty of time in the coming years to get some of these guys into the more difficult to achieve programs, but wanted to put ourselves in the best position possible to hopefully get a higher overall success rate here in the early going as we start trying to build a little bit of a foundation to hopefully build this franchise on. And we'll do a quick summary of the award season before we start finishing things up. Finishing things up doesn't really make a lot of sense the way I said that, but by getting into free agency. But a few things to do before then. We did have a Gold Glove winner, Brenton Doyle, who we already talked about, won his 3rd consecutive Gold Glove in center field for us. He'll be back with us this year. Hopefully we'll be an asset continuing to track down some of those line drives and fly balls that our pitching staff lets go flying out into deep center field in the gaps. We also actually had a Silver Slugger winner, Hunter Goodman, the young hitter, 280 average, 27 homers and 97 ribbies. He was named the Silver Slugger at catcher, which was a little bit surprising. If you followed us closely, you'll know that once we brought Drew Romo up, Goodman moved into a almost pure DH role for us. So we only started 52 games at catcher this past season. Not even a third of the games that the Rockies played this year was he our starting catcher. But apparently the crop of catchers in the National League was so poor this year that the youngster Hunter Goodman from the Rockies did get the Silver Slugger at that position. The big awards in baseball this year were extremely similar to what they were in 2024. Tarik Skubal, the American League Cy Young Award winner for a second consecutive season, 14-10 record, but led the AL in strikeouts, ERA, WHIP, strikeouts per 9, walks per 9, quality start percentage, FIP minus, and WAR at 7.6. And your National League Cy Young Award winner, Yamamoto from the Dodgers, 29 first place votes. He had a big year, led the National League with 16 wins and a 2.70 ERA, while striking out 224 and putting up a 4.4 WAR. Paul Skeens second in the voting, and Zach Wheeler got the other first place vote, although he finished third overall. Your National League and American League MVPs are very familiar names as well. Unanimous MVP for Mr. Ohtani of the Dodgers, wins a fourth MVP award, third consecutive NL MVP. 9-7 on the mound with a 4.13 earned run average and a 2.6 WAR as a pitcher. And as a hitter, all he did was hit 286 with 40 homers and 106 ribbies. Also stole 40 bases, so another 40-40 season for him, although not quite as impressive as the 50-50 season from a year ago. And he led the National League with 123 runs scored, 7 triples, and a 570 slugging percentage. You could argue, though, that your unanimous American League MVP award winner, Aaron Judge, had an even more impressive season. Won his third MVP award, second in a row in the American League. And he basically led the American League in just about everything, with 122 runs, 204 hits, 66 homers, 149 ribbies, 93 walks, 353 batting average, 444 on base percentage, 751 slugging percentage, a silly 1.195 OPS, 218 WRC plus, and a 10.5 WAR. So a monster season for Judge, who also won the first World Series of his career with the Yankees here in this world. Won the Triple Crown, of course, and his 66 home runs extends his American League record, and arguably is the clean record for all of Major League Baseball. So as free agency begins, the good news with us moving on from even more players in the early stages of this offseason is that we've got a bit more money to spend, over $50 million in money available. So we definitely can be a player for any free agent that's out there. That said, right now we're 28th in budget and 29th in player payroll. So although we can add any player we want, we still are a 58-win team that has lost some players, admittedly not necessarily particularly good players, since the start of the offseason. So even if we add the best player on the free agent market, that in and of itself maybe turns us into a 63 or 64 win team. We are not one player away, so I think it's going to probably behoove us to take a somewhat prudent and measured approach to free agency this offseason. Like the fact that we've got money available to spend, but don't want to necessarily dump it into an 8 to 10 year contract for a guy that we truly don't believe in, and put ourselves back in a position where we've got a contract that we don't really like on the books. So the hope is that in addition to there being some international free agents who might be able to help us, that the Major League free agent class ends up being interesting as well. Take a look first at the international free agent class here. 8 position players and a couple of pitchers available. Center fielder Hisashi Soga, probably the most interesting guy out there, looking for almost $20 million a year. The 27-year-old is a switch-hitting corner outfielder with decent speed, potentially borderline outstanding gap power, home run power, and eye. The issue with Mr. Soga is going to be making contact, and he does look like, with that 30 avoid strikeout ratings that we think he has, that he could be guy striking out 250 plus times a season if we're playing him every day, which we probably would if we brought him on board for about $20 million. We're scouting him up. Hope to find out more about him over the next few weeks. I tend to think that the avoid strikeouts rating is so horrible and the defense is so mediocre that spending $20 million on him probably doesn't make sense for a team that's unlikely to be competitive for the next few years. But I can't deny that gap power, home run power, and eye combination isn't intriguing. But he's looking for 8 years right now, as I noted, close to $20 million a year, and just don't think that's a direction I'll ultimately go. But we'll know more as we get a scouting report, and hopefully we'll get some scouting reports from the worldwide scouting department as well. Third baseman Alex Lamas out of Cuba. Very average-ish defensive profile, not a ton of speed. Gap power, home run power, and eye all well below average. But the 26-year-old is a potentially outstanding contact hitter, not looking for crazy money, less than $2 million. Don't really know, though, that he'd have a big-time future in the majors as a member of our organization. And the rest of the international free agent class, as far as the position players, not particularly interesting. But there are 2 lefties and 2 righties, 2 of them from Cuba and 2 of them from Japan, who are pitchers who are available. And given the needs of our team, the hope is that there's a guy in his mid-20s who throws 100 miles an hour, above average in all of the big categories, that's available for us to potentially make a move on. Unfortunately, the crew of pitchers here in the international free agent class is not particularly impressive. The best of the lot is the 33-year-old left-hander Takayuki Ryu out of Japan. Looks like a pretty average-ish profile. We'll scout him up, but a 33-year-old who throws in the mid-90s with below, or throws in the low 90s with below-average stuff. Not all that exciting as a pitching prospect. Admittedly, has a profile that might be able to help our team, and it looks like he's not really looking for anything significant as far as a contract at this point. So not inconceivable that he'll end up with us on the Rockies, but also unlikely that he'll ultimately be a big-time difference maker for us at the major league level. So unfortunately for us, not really the most interesting pool of international free agents I've ever seen. Probably going to be patient there, get some scouting reports, and maybe bring somebody on board, but unlikely to be anyone all that impactful. So we turn our attention to the major league free agents, and there are certainly some popular players with big names and good skill sets available. Pete Alonso, Alec Bregman, Kyle Schwarber, Kyle Tucker, and Marcell Ozuna heading the class this year. The issue is they're all looking for $35 to $45 million a year. Basically would be the one big move that we could make. And for the most part, our corner infielders / corner outfielders / DH types, where we have a little bit of talent on the major league roster. Given that I don't expect we're going to be a true contender, and honestly, given that I don't even necessarily think that we're going to even be mediocre for the next few seasons, would have to make sure that anyone that we picked up is someone who can hopefully help us longer than that. So I'd say that the 28, soon to be 29-year-old Kyle Tucker is the youngest of the premium position player free agents, would be the guy we'd most likely bring on board. But again, he's looking for over $40 million a year. Wants a 9-year contract, including a couple of player option that takes him into his late 30s. Just don't necessarily think that that's the way to go. Cody Bellinger, Bo Bichette, Goldschmidt out there. Marco Luciano is an interesting name. Has a little bit of upside here. Young infielder. Was for some reason just cut by the San Francisco organization, even though he was a above average player in AAA. Didn't do much in the majors this past year, was slightly below replacement level, an admittedly small sample size of just 76 at-bats. But as a 24-year-old, our scout thinks there's still a little bit of upside to his ratings. He's respectable defensively, can play a lot of spots in the infield. Don't really understand why the Giants didn't bring him back, because he is a guy that also has minor league options available. Not looking for a ton of money. Don't think he's necessarily an impact player, but certainly someone who could help the back end of our roster at a pretty reasonable point in terms of his price. So definitely someone that we'll continue looking into. Did get a suggestion to bring over Mr. Arias from David Kane. Thought that 80 contact could allow him to, especially in concert with his ability to avoid strikeouts, potentially chase a very high batting average with us in Colorado a year after he hit .291 and led the league in at-bats and hits for the Padres. Would be kind of fun to have somebody like that in Coors Field, but with a $23.6 million price tag. Probably not someone we're going to bring on board, given the very mediocre infield play, as well as the fact that he's kind of a one-dimensional contact hitter, actually very similar to the player we saw in the international free agent pool. Turning our attention to the pitchers, definitely some interesting guys to potentially bring on board. Not surprisingly, some of the highest end pitchers available on the free agent market are relievers. One last time for me to admit my stupidity on Chris Martin. You may remember we picked him up shortly before the trade deadline in a deal with the Rangers, and we had no real need for a veteran established major league pitcher. Several of you have mentioned or asked, hey, did you think about flipping him and seeing what you could get for him after you picked him up in that trade? And the answer was no, I did not, simply because I'm an idiot. Obviously, I should have done that. Don't know that we would have gotten anything incredible in return, but it certainly would have been better than letting him leave as a free agent. He was good for us with a sub-3 ERA and 10 saves in his 19 appearances, but no real need for a 58-win team to have had a 39-year closer. So if I had been thinking about things in more detail when he was what we got back in the Kyle Freeland plus a number of prospects trade with the Rangers, I certainly would have flipped Martin for whatever we could have gotten after that, since it was a luxury we certainly did not need to have a pitcher like him in the bullpen this year. The most interesting starting pitcher for us, I think, at least in terms of his skill set and his profile, to think about is Ranger Suarez, lefty, coming from the Phillies. Below average stuff, above average movement, average-ish control, 6-year veteran, was an all-star back in 2024. Does have extreme ground ball tendencies with a ground baller pitcher type. Some negative personality traits. He's 30 years old now, and he's looking for $27 million a year over 7 seasons, taking him into his mid-30s. Given his personality quirks, and given that we're more than one player away from being a winner. I think I'm inclined to pass on him, even though we've got the money to potentially bring him on board. Taking a look more broadly at the starting pitchers who are out there, the price tags for the top end starters are all in the 20 to 25, $27 million range. And I just don't know that there's anyone, given that they're all, with the exception of Dylan Cease, who's out with a torn elbow ligament for 8 months, in their 30s. Don't know that any of their timelines really fit well with our timeline. Probably going to have to make a 5, 6, 7-year offer to most of these guys. So we're hopefully going to be competing to be a 500 team and hopefully ultimately competing for the playoffs towards the end of any contract that we'd be giving to these pitchers. But they'd all be in their mid to late 30s by the time we get competitive, and likely have a couple more years of making pretty big money when they're likely to be more fragile and less effective than they are today. So I think we probably just err on the side of patience. Definitely have money to spend and would like to spend some of it on free agents to improve this roster. Hopefully supplement that with the Rule 5 draft and possibly the trade going forward. But I think most likely the strategy is going to be to add multiple low-cost players on not crazy contracts that can help us at least move towards respectability over these next couple of years. I know that's not the most exciting thing to do and not the most ambitious goal, but at least with the money we've opened up, we've got the ability to start building this team in our way. Not expecting it to be a good team anytime soon, but at least it'll be our bad team rather than the previous regime's bad team. Did get some feedback from both Undercover Boomer and Gilbert Gonzalez on bringing Alex Cobb on board. Does have those extreme ground ball tendencies with a ground baller pitcher type. Above average movement, his stuff well below average. He's got a 4-pitch arsenal of below average pitches. He's 38 years old and he's fragile physically, so you may wonder, what the heck does this pitcher do to help your team? And it's a legitimate question. He was last year 6-5 with a sub-4 ERA for Detroit. Put up a 2.0 WAR. He's got the stamina to give us 5+ innings most times out. So he is a guy who, sadly for us, could improve our pitching staff. And although he is 38 years old and fragile, only looking for a 1-year deal at $8 million a year, so we can probably get him for a little bit less than that. So there's no long-term commitment if we bring him on board, and he probably would be one of the top pitchers on our team. Would give us those extreme ground ball tendencies if we keep trying to build a stronger infield to maybe take a little pressure off of the wide expanses of Coors Field. I think that's interesting advice from both Undercover Boomer and Gilbert Gonzalez, and I think honestly I'm leaning towards probably making an offer to him. Again, a 38-year-old free agent certainly doesn't fit with our medium-term timeline. But if the goal is to start moving this team from 58 wins up to, say, 65 wins next year and then get into the 70s the year after that, not making a long-term commitment while bringing on a guy who might be able to help us be a little more professional and respectable in the rotation this year is a path that I am considering. But when all is said and done, I think it's probably going to be a somewhat quiet free agent period for us. Want to avoid making any long-term mistakes. We'll continue offline before the next episode to investigate how long a time commitment we'd really need to make for some of these middle to higher end options that are out there for us. And who knows? Maybe we bring in a decent reliever or two along with a acceptable starting pitcher or two. Avoid making long-term commitments, but hopefully improve the edges of this roster a bit for the next couple of seasons and get the team moving in a better direction. One final thing before we finish up. Appreciate the initial thoughts and feedback on the international amateur free agent class. We've gone through one more trip to the private training sessions since the last time we visited. And Oscar Perez, the Gimp, we're up to average scouting accuracy on him, and he still looks like he could be a very interesting left-handed pitcher for us. Also has the great nickname. Could be throwing triple digits. Negatively, as we get to know him better, there are some personality traits that we find troubling, but we have evolved with the times, and we're a little more willing to take a flyer on a potential diva in the locker room in the clubhouse. Perez also going to be 17 years old in just a week and a half or so. So ultimately will be one of the older prospects in this class when all is said and done. But we're going to continue scouting up the entire crew that we talked about last time. Only average scouting accuracy on all of them at this point, and hopefully we can improve that over the next almost 2 months until we need to start making decisions with the IAFA class. And last but not least, and I know I keep kind of saying that, one other thing that I talked about during the episode that was not, that I haven't touched upon yet, did make 3 coaching changes. We had a couple of coaches retire. Our pitching coach in rookie ball retired, and we replaced him with Griffin Bailey, who we're really excited about. Legendary at teaching pitching, outstanding with development and mechanics. Only average relationships with the young guys that are going to be going through that rookie league team, but certainly think he could hopefully give a nice boost to the development of a lot of the young guys he'll be dealing with down there. And we also had a AAA manager retire. We replaced him with Toby Staveland, excellent with development, mechanics, and aging. And we think he's going to have good relationships with people. So I think he's a good guy to bring into the organization. And honestly, he could be a potential replacement down the line for Bud Black at 68 years old. Black still has 4 years on his contract, so we don't just want to pay about $5.3 million quite yet to buy him out. Depending on how free agency goes with the money that we have, I can't rule out deciding to fire him in January or February and perhaps promoting someone from the minors or hiring someone who's still on the market if there's an interesting manager out there. But kind of want to see what we end up doing in free agency and what the money looks like for not just free agents, but scouting and player development before we potentially eat $5 million. Also, there is some hope that at 68 years old, if we do keep Black around, he just retires before the end of this contract and opens up that spot for us. We did fire our bench coach and hire a new bench coach, Tristan Johnson. Excellent with development, which we love. Only average with mechanics, good with aging. So decent but not great combination there. But he has good relationships and most importantly, excellent teacher overall. And bringing Mr. Johnson on board puts us in a position where when we look at our staff roles now between Johnson and the base coaches we hired during last season, Mike Freeman and Willie Concepcion, we have some excellent or better coaching, teaching those defensive positions as well as running for our major leaguers, which hopefully will help a little bit on the margins. Black, with that normal personality that struggles with personable guys, still is impacting all of the personable coaches on our team and generally not the most helpful thing in terms of relationships. So we will consider looking towards moving on from him, but not a move that we're going to make right now. We've got over 5 months before the season gets underway. No guarantee that Black is still in that seat when we do get to the start of spring training or the start of the regular season. But for the time being, before taking a over $5 million hit by buying him out, we're going to see how this off-season goes. So if you have thoughts on what we should potentially consider doing in free agency, would love to hear them. We do have money to spend, and there are some big guys out there. But as I've talked about, I'm likely to be somewhat conservative with the purse strings this off-season. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.